We are live. This is the market update, the morning edition. We will be doing this for 2 weeks. I am your host, Bill Noble. Gee, let's see what we got going on. We got the culture conflict. We got the Fed meeting coming up. Are you worried? Let's talk about the Eclipse. The Eclipse happens 2 days after the Fed. Patreon Platinum literally just got the tactical roadmap between now and early October. And when this thing came out of the Gann model, this is the face I made. Now, earlier in the month, we did expect a dip around like September 12th to the 22nd, somewhere around there. However, the Gann model has a very interesting take on that. Like I said, I was a little shocked as to how the model read the next couple of days. So, we'll go through. I'll show it in Patreon later, but let's talk about what we have to take seriously. One, I think this big Solana buy near the top, or this like Solana outperformance, even though there's nothing wrong with Solana, may have created some altcoin FOMO at the top, like the new high in pump.fun. Okay. A lot of stuff going on there, big treasury purchases of Solana. And I'm just like, the stocks of the company buying Solana are going up 100 and something percent. And I'm like, uh-oh. And there is a lot of negative chart divergence. Like the one thing that happened over the weekend that, I wasn't really expecting, but it just kind of happened when this market rolled over, is the charts turned against the market, at least temporarily, right? There's DeMark work all over the 4-hour charts. That's a little grisly. And everybody is undoubtedly going to be talking about the fact that there were new highs in the big cryptos. There were new highs in total 3, just total altcoin market cap, followed by lower highs in stochastics or oscillators like RSI, with those RSI or oscillator metrics rolling over. In other words, it's called bearish divergence or bear div on crypto Twitter. So, not a pretty chart situation. Now, what I can say goes something like this. Most likely what's occurring now is sell the fact, right? So everybody like bid it up thinking they were getting 50 basis points or whatever from the Fed, because everybody is still assigning meaning to everything the Fed does. Eye roll. All right. So if there's any disappointment trade, for example, if the market tries to go up off the Fed meeting and then fails, I would consider that to be negative. What would be wonderful is if the market was actually able to hold steady, off the Fed and for the 4 days after. That is the optimal scenario. Now, that is not the Gann model scenario at all. But I would think the most hopeful thing that can happen is that the market can work off the divergence by chopping around. You definitely don't want to see a failed rally. Now, all that said, even if that does happen, eclipses create volatility. First, it was volatility on the upside with Solana going, wow, what was that? Right. And Solana is still strong like bull. Okay. So that was the first volatility. And then, you have the possibility of volatility on the downside. If you're going to get ready for a Q4 dip, this is just like 2017, where you get these you could get these flushes, and then that's your chance, right? That's the big altcoin opportunity. In other words, I'm advocating, you have to manage your P&L. You have to manage your risk. I don't think this is a time to be levered at all. But this is a time to ignore the noise. If there's all this noise around the Fed, or something else happens in addition to the Fed that's potentially negative. The net of the net is, if there's a dip, I want to buy it aggressively in pieces, almost like a mini DCA, right? Fed comes out, failed rally, first leg in. And then if something else happens, if this negative divergence kicks in, which, it could take a while. Normally people think it's over in 3 days, and frequently it's not. It's not. And the Gann model knows it, right? In addition to all the Gann related stuff. So it's like failed rally down, first entry, right? Chop. And if there's 2 and 3 down, that's where you grab it. That's what you do. Because this could be a huge opportunity, especially in Bitcoin, if anything the model says is correct. Again, that's in Patreon Platinum. Want to give our customers the best read possible. Just as a point, as an administrative point, this will be the new time for this week and next week. Okay, we have Bull Runner here. Good morning. Art. Canadian Coiner. Good morning. Zepedas. PWBITG. Welcome. Guess Who Chicken Boo. Welcome. Thomas Chai. Members Richard Barry. Brandon. Bob the Bruce. Tooth. All members. 1 year anniversary of the membership group is the 17th. Fed Day. Hal Lopez. Super happy he doesn't have to get up in the middle of the night. Tyler Hall. Gaseous Clay. Daniel from the Shore. Felix. This market is killing me. Dude, Eclipse volatility will make your teeth chatter, and it is here. And it snuck up on everybody, including me. JH, Crypto Shaman, Bob the Bruce, Felix, Cal, 1988. That was a very good year. That was a very good year. Huckleberry Native, good morning. All right. Let's start with macro. So I have to be more careful this week than last week, because stuff is getting taken down off social media. Let's start with Elon. Elon gets on the big screen in England and says things about the culture conflict that I found shocking. Shocking, right? In other words, the United Kingdom and London is a major financial district and a major financial artery for the world. The fact that Elon was calling for, let's call it aggressive action, was somewhat shocking. And, based on what Toby was saying last week, I wasn't going to say this, but now with Elon, I kind of have to. This thing over there could get worse and potentially create a capital market disturbance. Okay, end of that. Now, Tesla, the good news, Tesla has gone up because Elon just did a massive insider buy. Normally, insiders are selling. Elon took his stock and was like, yeah, I'm going to buy billions. And that's simply and plainly because of one word: robots. Robots, right? The robot trade is 20 trillion worldwide. I think there's 2 or 3 robot projects that I know of. Right now, what these robot crypto projects do is unknown, but there's no project in crypto. And Elon has told you that the valuation of robots is too low, because that's why he's buying the stock. So again, another signal from equities that valuations of anything related to technology. One guy, instead of calling it Web3, calls crypto capitalism 2.0. I'm like, wow, I wish I thought of that. AI plus crypto equals capitalism 2.0, right? Disrupting the whole current order. And it would be very fitting at the dawn of crypto if there was some teeth-chattering altcoin or crypto volatility right before the big ramp, when everyone discovers this is all too cheap. All right, so there's supposedly a 94% chance that the Fed does cut rates on Wednesday. I'm of the opinion these things don't really matter in the big picture, but, you know, it is hard to argue that point when everybody is so fixated on the rate cut cycle. You know, the executive branch is already talking and criticizing the Fed chairman, saying he's the worst ever. They haven't even gotten to the announcement yet, and they're already after him. There's also talk that the current administration inherited an economy that outside the AI data center build out isn't doing much, right? In other words, you know, the economy is probably going to run a little hot. Okay. It's going to run a little hot, but this labor market issue is serious. And hopefully the Fed takes it seriously, because that data shows they should have been cutting in February. And Bloomberg is announcing this morning, which I think this is a relevant screen share, could China follow the Fed with rate cuts? In other words, interestingly, are we headed for a panic rate cut cycle? Meaning we could do it and then other people start doing it. I mean, other people have been already doing it. The ECB has been doing it for quite some time. Now, meanwhile, back at the Legacy Ranch, guys are complaining about inflation running at 4% versus the Fed's 2% fairy tale target. And one guy was boldly both engagement farming and calling for rate hikes. In other words, the Fed overprinted, and they should actually be raising rates, not lowering rates. My God, can you imagine if he stepped up to the podium and did nothing? That would be some serious Eclipse volatility, obviously, right? Because, you know, the market was looking for 50 last week, and now everybody is selling, wondering, you know, what's going to happen, or doing sell the fact, or see all the above. I think the labor market is so bad. Really, I think it's so bad. He should do 50. Most likely he'll do 25, because if he does 50, he'll admit that he's messed up, right? It would be like he was panicking. That's my guess. And my guess is markets are not going to like 25 basis points. That's where, you know, you do have to be careful. At least think about what happens if you get a failed rally. Hopefully that's just a non-issue. But I do think you have to think about it. Now, if the Fed does cut rates or start a rate cut cycle, you know, equities are already at the highs. You know, this AI data center build out is a clear catalyst, especially since people spent half the year being bearish equities. They thought the tariff trade was the trade. They thought we were going into a recession because of the tariffs. None of that actually happened. Not even close. So, you know, the economy could run a little hot, and that could be good for, you know, capital markets, stocks maybe. And I think crypto, obviously. I mean, if the Fed is cutting rates when they shouldn't be, or the Fed is behind the 8 ball and doesn't have any choice but to cut rates, even if they don't want to, crypto becomes the ultimate hedge against any disturbance. Inflation, unemployment, you know, some of this, like, I got to like narrow it down. Let's call them social issues, which, I mean, not strangely, but they're all over the tape. Like, all of the news is about the social issues. Now, I know something very unfortunate happened, But the intensity of the news about the social problems is, in my mind, overshadowing the solution to the social problems. As RFKJ would say, as Miss Teen Crypto, who quotes RFKJ, fix the money, fix the world. It's kind of that simple, right? I mean, if you have people's purchasing power eroded, you have people sort of, I don't know, people are blocked from like going to college, getting a job, getting a car, and getting a condo. If you break that chain, you get different ideologies, let's say, very different. All right. So what's the solution to that? Well, it has to be crypto. That's why, if there is some sort of Fed Eclipse, dip, which again, what the model came out with, I was just shocked. I hope it's one of these cases where it's not correct. Okay. But the last time I said I hope it was not correct, it was. So if there is some kind of dip, you got to take advantage of it. Because I don't know, from where I'm sitting, there's only one solution, which is to fix the money. And no matter what Powell says on Wednesday, he looks like a fool. It looks like the whole thing is broken. Now, it's because it is. But, as they say in equities, it doesn't matter until it does. As simple as that. It doesn't matter until it does. And everybody assumes, like I just sort of went over, that, rate cuts obviously are healthy for assets. They're going to result in a bigger concentration of wealth. It's not really healthy, but that's what's possible. I think people see stocks going up off a rate cut and their life is miserable. Could be a reminder about the concentration of wealth. Just saying. What's the solution to that? Crypto. Right? So, if they hit it or they don't hit it, I think you got to somehow be involved, leaving dry powder for any Eclipse Fed-related volatility. I mean, a dip could be a gift at this point, given everybody has huge upside targets. Like ETH's going to 5K, ETH's going to 8K, Bitcoin's going to 190 or 200. Remember all this? Strangely, no one is talking about that. I mean, I understand that the political news is way more sensational, but don't let it take your eye off what's going on in crypto and all the upside targets that existed last week. Now, speaking of upside targets, who gets it is Saylor. They bought 10,000, close to 10,000 Bitcoin in the last 5 weeks. That's a lot, right? Their little dot plot is out. I mean, if this is not anything but the USD or the DXY, I don't know what is. Right? I mean, most of these buys were relatively modest, and now he's just after it, frankly, because he can get the liquidity, right? Other whales wanted to sell, and he just hoovered it all up, and that could include sovereigns, right? That includes sovereigns. So, you got to ask yourself, who exactly is buying here? Like, he bought at 110, he bought at 114. That's interesting that, market makers never were able to get the original purchase back. Now, that is a good time to remind you that, these market makers, they got squeezed last week. They got squeezed pretty hard. They got squeezed really hard. And just to note that if there is a failed rally, they're going to come after the market. I don't think there's really a seller in the market like, oh, God, I have so much crypto. Let me lighten up here. But there are short sellers. So, but right now, Michael Saylor is winning. Michael Saylor is winning. Okay. Crypto companies are now buying other crypto companies, which is interesting and dangerous, right? This is actually what happened in 1929, where everybody was buying everyone else's stock. Then they put the stocks into what's called trusts. It's like almost like mutual funds. Then they had trusts of trusts. So if any of these structures came unglued, everything came unglued. That's not what's happening now. But these treasury companies and their purchases in the market, you know, they create a level of FOMO. Crypto gets drained out of the system. And then again, it's vulnerable to a correction like what you're having today. And you're vulnerable to any time the charts roll over, which is today. Now, hopefully it's just 1 or 2 days and we're done. That's my hope. But, you know, you do have a lot of FOMO, right? Bitcoin seems to be in very secure hands. Bitcoin dominance seems to be very low. Again, that the GAN work in this thing is, to me, it feels like, it says it's kind of at this point like eye on the Eclipse. This is in Patreon Platinum. This literally came out right before I went on the air. And the way I would describe it is it's the playbook for the worst case scenario, which I'm assuming right now is 25 basis points. You know, if there's no rate cut, well, okay, well, that's, I don't think I have to explain that to you. Anytime you see this thing down, as far as I'm concerned, especially if it goes down over a period of days, like let's say you get a 3-day drop, just saying, that's your opportunity, right? Everyone wants to buy it when it's up. Can you buy it when it's down? Right now, I'm trying to insert the courage so that there is some weird event, which I hope there isn't. But if it does happen, that's your chance. Yeah, you have to focus because, again, the social issues, I think, add to the bullish urgency in crypto, right? That's why you got whales like Kyle Tsunami and his Solana treasury company, you know, FOMOing in big. I mean, you know, they're buying Solana basically at the all-time high, close to it, the way Michael Saylor was buying Bitcoin at 20K in, 2020. That was the old all-time high. Every time it gets to an all-time high, everyone's trying to implement the Saylor playbook. Now, again, the great news is that pumps price, but when those guys get done buying, it does subject the market to a correction. Now, interestingly, as an aside, I saw a proposal by Polkadot to cap the supply. In other words, all these altcoins that were ramping 5% a day last week, okay, well, you know what? They're correcting 3 to 4%, and hopefully that's all they correct. Most altcoins as of now, September 15th at roughly noon Eastern, I don't know, everything's down like 3 or 4%. I don't think that's a disaster. I think if Bitcoin holds 114, that's a big GAN line. That would be very encouraging. I think Bitcoin is going to hold throughout this process no matter what. Arrow is up this morning. Another good sign. Crypto, as that guy said, is capitalism 2.0. Crypto disrupts the system. Crypto is too cheap. And I like to say it this way. If you line up theory, and theory says this whole negative divergence thing, which I'm going to show you in a minute, so don't go anywhere. If you look at the charts, it's not that pretty. So you have to be ready for that. You also have to be ready for what happens if the bearish structures don't really work or they run their course in a day or two. Because again, what the Fed does doesn't matter. The Fed does not affect capitalism 2.0. The Fed does not affect the fact that crypto relative to the AI trade is absurdly cheap. Absurdly cheap. I mean, Elon Musk thinks the thing in equities is absurdly cheap. Hence, the whole purchase of Tesla stock. He thinks it's too cheap. That's the message, right? He's sending a signal that, don't get short my stock because I believe in my stock, period. Now, Michael Saylor is doing the same thing in Bitcoin, and we just kind of shrug it off because we're used to it. Doesn't make any sense, right? Now, again, something that you have to be a little bit careful of. What's next for Bitcoin? It can't go down ahead of the Fed. Okay, let's hope not. Kind of hate headlines like that, right? By the way, just an announcement. I saw an article that Maker is converting over to Sky. That's official on the 17th. So you might want to look into that. Father of the crypto bills, right? So there's crypto mom, right, over at the SEC, and I guess crypto dad, right, is trying to make the crypto market structure bill not only exist, but help make the stablecoin bill better. Now, one of the things that is really working in favor of crypto is that this whole divisiveness thing, which frankly, I think is a trick and a distraction from what I can't say, right? But it's a distraction. And it gets more intense all the time. Now, the thing about the crypto bill is that this is an opportunity for both sides to say, okay, let's agree on something. Because I think the longer this goes on, clearly, I don't think it's good for the blue side the longer it goes on. And it could disenchant people on the red side of the equation as well. I think the crypto market structure bill is more likely to happen because they got to do something. They got to pass something to show an accomplishment for these 2026 midterm elections. Because right now, it doesn't look like anybody can work together. And, I think the blue people are taking it on the chin for some of the rhetoric that's come out. So everybody's got to do something positive, which is why on any dip, I just think you have to be active. Okay, now back to some excesses, right? Pantera-Backed Solana Treasury firm Helios raises $500 million, okay, for Solana purchases. Stock soars 200%. So, I mean, you have 200% moves in Solana stocks, and you have 20% moves in Solana. Something's off here, right? Either crypto has to go massively higher, which I think is the case for Q4, which, everyone kind of has forgotten about it, right? People are so conditioned to this 3 days up, 3 days down. And of course, it's awful. I'm not minimizing it. I'm not minimizing the fact that every time someone gets hopeful, like SUI goes down 4% in everyone's face. I understand this. It's really annoying, right? And then you could have additional volatility. And what you don't want to happen is you don't want to lose focus. You don't, right? Because the stock market is telling you things about crypto. Again, as I've said, it's telling you it's way too cheap. Charts. Let's go. Okay, so this is Bitcoin on a daily chart. All right. You have a major Gann line at 114. I think if the Gann line held, that would be unbelievably constructive. If the Gann line doesn't hold and there's major volatility, you know, the market was at 109 at the end of August. So I thought the new range was 114 to 125, kind of hoping that that's still the case. But if Mr. Market has a different idea, then, you know, the range could be 114, I don't know, 110. Let's just hope 114 holds. I would strongly prefer that, to state the obvious. Now, let's go over to what happened to the market at a tactical level. So over the weekend, naturally, when no one was paying attention, right, you had this euphoric run up in Solana, and you got yourself a DeMark 13 top. Now, over here, there was a couple 13 tops, which the market ignored because of these gigantic Treasury companies. Oh, my God, Huckleberry Native. The $50 super chat. Stay strong, Spartans. We appreciate you, sir, deeply. You know, when you have this kind of 13 top and then you have this reaction, I mean, you got at least one more day of this weakness until you get like a 9 bottom. Now, if you go to Bitcoin on a 4-hour chart, okay, it's not good either for the moment, right? You had resistance at 116. Bitcoin failed there and then put a 13 top in. Now, I don't know. I mean, there's a case for this to be over at 114. And if it is, that would be absolutely wonderful. Wonderful, right? You get 13 top, 2-day, 8 hours down, and then hold. Glorious. Love it. Okay, now, if not, the market's vulnerable. It's just that simple, right? These 13 targets, these 13 tops, like, this one you could ignore. We'll see if we can ignore this one. Ignoring things is not necessarily disciplined technical analysis. That's why, when the Gann model looked at some of the charts, it was like, okay, no bueno, short term. Or actually, it didn't say that. It said, beware the failed rally off the Fed. And I think that that's a reasonable thing, right? Don't get caught in a failed rally after the Fed. Now, again, that said, what's really the worst case scenario in ETH? Really, the worst case scenario is that you unwind some of this FOMO and go down to 4,300. Wow. We really are in a different world in Ethereum where we're like, well, the worst case scenario is 4,300. Considering ETH was going to 0 3 or 4 months ago, according to most people. So ETH doesn't look so bad to me. It looks okay. You know what I mean? It's not like, oh my God. Now, I don't know what's on the Solana daily chart. Okay. The daily chart of Solana feels just fine. It feels okay. 227 is a very important level. I don't think I would want to see the market below 227. But the way this DeMark work is set up, you could be headed for a 9 top. You're already kind of getting the correction. So again, back to Solana. This could be it. This could be the dip. I bet Big Rich is thinking that. This could be the dip. You get 1-2-day dips. That's been it. Now, again, once you get the structure that I think is coming here, you definitely want to beware the failed rally. You don't want that, right? You don't want the failed rally off the Fed. Now, XRP, which, popped its head above $3, and now we have to come back down here and hang out. But XRP on a 4-hour chart is already put in the 9 bottom, and XRP never went up. So I don't know. I really don't see a big problem in XRP. I don't. Mainly because, again, XRP never really participated on the upside. Everyone hates that coin. I don't really understand that. I mean, I know retail likes it, but there's a lot of haters on XRP. I don't know why anybody would not like fast money, particularly since CZ, which I talked about last week, is basically telling people that it's ridiculous for the entire crypto ecosystem to be worth a fraction of a giant chip company. Okay. So Bitcoin seems to have more problems on DeMark work on a daily chart, right? Like, obviously, this kind of gross move up and then reversal is, that's not a good look. Okay. I hope 114 holds. If it doesn't, then it looks like it's 112. All right. Now, I think this is the chart that's going to make the rounds, right? So this is total 3. Matter of fact, I was looking at one stream this morning. I mean, this was like the second thing the guy said. So altcoin market cap has been making a series of new highs. This is total 3. It gets to its premium zone. And then you have higher highs in altcoin market cap, and you have lower lows. This is the LuxAlgo oscillator matrix. I'm sure you have it in other places as well. So, frequently when you get these divergences, right? So if we kind of zoom in, altcoin market cap is coming into a support zone. So, I don't think anyone has to freak out today. That said, with these type of divergences, okay, just come off the screen share for just a second. When you have momentum divergences, you have bearish divergences. Normally the market will go down and then it will try to recover. Then if that recovery doesn't work, that's when the negative divergence kicks in, which, really enhances the beware the failed rally and probably what the Gann model was looking at. Okay. Again, down is fine. Down, bounce, and down again, that's not good. Because at that point, you will see these market makers that sold all this Solana, that sold all this Bitcoin, they will be after the market. So, I have my view of the world, but I also have to respect, what's on the charts. Like Huckleberry Native says, dips are for living. Guess who Chicken Boo says, I really don't have a problem with the dip, right? Felix is like, I'm tired of dips. That's why the stock market is gold and better, because it doesn't dip like this crypto hootenanny. Dude, I understand. I feel you, right? The frustration, particularly in being in this business for like a living, is epic. However, often enough, like a low, nothing good is ever happening at a low, whether it's today or whether it's on a post-Fed disappointment, whatever. Nothing is normally happening at a low that anyone thinks is good. Nothing, right? At a low, everything is terrible. I hate this thing. Gold and stocks do nothing but go up. Crypto does nothing but chop around. Companies in the stock market buy crypto. They go parabolic and crypto does nothing. However, I will note that that is exactly the opposite of what you really want to be doing, because investing in a decentralized ecosystem is the only way to survive the future. I mean, if you look at this culture, social issue, you could have problems in the streets. You could have this affecting sovereign credit ratings in Europe. I mean, some of this stuff is not funny. And I realize that we're getting chopped to bits. But if we don't really look at what's going on, like if we only look at our P&L, we're going to sell. We're going to sell. Because this happens to everybody. This happens to Stan Druckenmiller. You buy something, it goes down, you want to get out. Or you buy something, it doesn't go up, and then it goes down and you want to get out. You're so frustrated, you can't see straight. You throw in the towel, you quit, you give up, and that is the low, unfortunately, right? Like, if you've been holding it and you can take the volatility, leave it. Not investment advice. If you leverage and you need to adjust it so that you don't lose it, adjust it. Again, maybe it's a 1 to 2 day. It's either a 1 to 2 day or a 10-day dip. If you were 10 days away from a major low that led to a monster rally when everybody realizes the only path out of all the problems in the world is crypto, I mean, you were 10 days away, right? So, Amazon is now betting big on crypto. Okay. The CEO of Coinbase. You think the CEO of Coinbase knows where the buy orders are? I think there are buy orders underneath the market, even if they hit it, which, they may try to. There's a lot of people buying under the market. If there's an event, they'll hit it and then they'll just turn around and buy it. Okay. Guess who Chicken Boo says hold with tequila? That would be a key Toby Ward strategy. Okay. Going to request-based TA. Ski Mask Dog. I don't know how much I can say about it. You got to watch the YouTube member podcast to see how it did in Altcoin Showdown. I think if Pump.Fun reached a new high, that may be like an excess period for memes, so there could be a break. But everybody is forgetting about the fact that memes are comic relief, and the general public may need comic relief, particularly if they come piling back into crypto. Not a lot going on this chart, but, there's Avocado up 50% today. Don't necessarily know what avocado is. Let's find out. Looks like some kind of launch pad or some sort of data company. Guess maybe we'll look at the Twitter. Now, I'm going to tell you one thing about the chart. Marketplace for trading AI agents. Reminds me of what Toby said about virtuals. Now, one thing I find very interesting about this chart, this was kind of like a rounding bottom. And this, in some ways, was a square range. Not entirely square, but sideways, directly sideways. Let's put it that way. These are the things that you want to see. And basically every altcoin looks like this. I had a guy, his name was Schiller, came on the stream. Let me just get this off. So you had this guy named Schiller come on the stream last time and says, is it too late for small cap coins that have not gone up? Micro caps was the question. The answer is no. Matter of fact, on the YouTube member podcast, right, most of what we talk about, we have a couple sections to the show, but, we go to Banter Bubbles and Ace Coin Picker, Toby Ward, just goes this one, this one, this one, and this one. And she actually picked more than I would have suspected, which I want to try to get into the Gann model to sort out, which ones are the top picks and which one to get after tactically. But obviously, all we're doing here is, we just keep publishing. These are the coins. These are the coins. These are the coins, right? The time to publish this stuff is when everyone hates the market. Everyone is upset. No one likes it. Everyone's irritated, right? We've got to listen to this whole Fed thing. I know crypto Twitter for engagement loves the whole macro thing. I just want to remind you that there's going to come a day, and I actually think we're already there, where like Toby says this, geopolitical conflicts, the Fed, the negative news of the day, the blah, 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 blah. Just throw that out the window. Throw that out the window, right? I understand there's some very, very unfortunate events that have transpired. I have a strong opinion about those events. But all that does is lead me back to crypto, right? I go, okay, well, all this stuff has happened. What's my solution? I know what my solution is. This, right? I mean, this is from an older report. So like long-term buy points. So I had some for September, some for October, etc. So this is just an example. The ETH long-term buy point was September 16th to 18th. So interestingly, the new work is different, but I think it's really interesting that, ETH reversals normally occur around this particular point based on Gen work. That's interesting. So if you don't have some deeper dip, if you don't have a failed rally, then guess what? It's a 1 to 2 day dip. It's as easy as that, right? Powell opens his mouth, and if it doesn't go up and then lurch lower, it's right here. Right? And interestingly, Solana, right? The dip day for Solana was the 21st. So it's like, Solana outperformed, and then maybe there's volatility or selling on the Eclipse. Boom, that's your date. Or that's the date Solana just takes off. I mean, the old GAN report says, look for volatility and panic to create opportunity. So I don't know what creates the panic around the solar eclipse. I don't have to. Right? So, this report is all very similar. And then it was like a secondary dip breakout entry, on the 22nd from the 20th to the 22nd. So either on a panic dip or a breakout, that was the day. The question is, how deep could the dip be? And if it is that deep, how do you manage it? And if it's not deep, how do you manage it? Which is what we have covered here. We'll be covering it more on Patreon, the reports in the platinum area, and we'll obviously be covering it tomorrow on the YouTube member podcast. We'll get Toby's take on it, which is an even better, obviously, it's the best filter. Okay. I go over some of these reports on that podcast. We call it the book report section. People probably don't know what a book report is. That's why we do it. Because nobody's heard of a book report before. It's something you used to do when you used to write by hand or with a typewriter. You'd read a book and you write a report about it. They probably don't do it anymore, right? Steve Vincent says, I've been watching the videos forever. This is the second time I've caught you live. Yes, we are doing something this week that's different, just temporarily. So we're on at 9:30 a.m. I'm sorry, we're on at 10:30 Eastern these next 2 weeks. Okay. Let's see what else we got in here. Okay. This is also a reminder that all of the links to all of our services, Patreon is different. YouTube is different. They are separate. Somebody out there subscribed to Twitter, which is just something that Twitter put there. Nothing happens on subscription Twitter. You have to subscribe in Patreon or on YouTube. Okay, that is the market update for today. We will see you tomorrow.